Hello, my name is Paul Arnold and I'm a qualified psychotherapist and a trained coach. And I also spent 25 years working in the advertising business, and along the way I picked up an MBA and an MSc in change. Now, in this series I really want to cover a range of different angles about narcissism in the workplace. For example, what is narcissism, how narcissism presents itself, as the behaviours we typically see, what causes narcissism in the first place, and then very much digging into how it shows up in the workspace. What impact does narcissism have on the people at work, and what people at their work should do about it? And then, a little bit of a soft sell on myself. What can I do to help the organisation, and how can I help the individual in that space? Now, clearly, I've got many stories having grown up in, I think you could suggest quite a narcissistic industry anyway, around what it's like working with lots of people who've got narcissistic tendencies. And I think that, it was very much accepted that was the price that one did in working in these organisations. Now, thankfully, I think a lot of that has changed now. Look, my mission these days is very much about, I want to help use my psychotherapy training, my MBA, my experience, etc., in helping to reduce toxicity within the workspace. So we create a much more supportive, collaborative workspace, a place where people can really grow and thrive, and at the end of the day, improve their productivity, but also increase the productivity of the company. And I always use the metaphor about, it's the roots and the soil it's in that creates the quality of the fruit on the tree. Now, I draw from my own experiences and I draw from a load of textbooks. So, we've got the diagnostic, the DSM, we've got character traits, drama of a gifted child, Bradshaw on family, the dynamics there, other specific books about narcissism, who is maybe the major proponent in working with narcissistic people. Again, work by sort of Bowlby about creating a secure place. Things like further work by object relations, people like Fairbairn and sort of Ballant, and clearly working on shame. Look, we live right now in a very narcissistic world. You just look at what's going on and how social media is fueling that. And then obviously we're working in a much more of a sort of individualistic space rather than the collectivism of the past. And so one of the big things, there are a couple of big themes I really want to cover in this. One is that not every narcissistic perceived attribute means that that person is a narcissist, okay? And the second thing is that I think we've got to be very careful we don't demonize narcissism. The current narrative that's out there on YouTube with lots of amateur psychologists is very much that these are deeply evil, absolutely bad people. And I think the condemning of them as being all bad is not only very destructive for them, but it's also very destructive for society in general. I think we've always got to remember that, there are parts of them that are acting in certain ways. And I'll draw upon something a bit later on called IFS, parts thing. And this idea that there are certain parts of us which get enacted to be in certain places as a protective role. And I think there are parts of these narcissistic people which are also good and not all bad. So if we vilify and victimize, it's not going to resolve the problem. It's only going to make it worse. It's going to push them further into that space. So I think we do need to have a little bit more compassionate perspective on often they're damaged people, damaged by damaged people themselves. And I think we've got to try to see it in a bigger light that doesn't excuse what they're doing, But I think the more we can understand what's driving them, the more we are able to help work with them and make sure we create a more compassionate and a more open place in the workplace.